Imagine being handcuffed at the airport, treated like a criminal, told you don't belong, only to be called minutes later to save hundreds of lives. That's exactly what happened when security attacked a black pilot, and moments later, she became the only hope for 317 terrified passengers. Stay with me, because what she did next left the whole world speechless. Aaliyah Monroe, 29 years old. A pilot who had spent nearly a decade fighting for the sky. On this morning, she walked through the Detroit airport with her uniform pressed, her license tucked neatly into her bag, and her head held high. She had worked too hard, sacrificed too much, to finally be where she was. But pride and peace rarely lasted long for her. At the security checkpoint, everything changed. A guard stopped her. He was tall, broad, with suspicion painted across his face. "Miss, I need you to step aside." His voice carried that sharp tone people used when they had already decided you were guilty of something. She obeyed. She'd been through this before. But this time felt different. He asked for her ID, her license, her boarding pass. She handed them over without shaking. Yet his eyes narrowed, as if her very existence was a trick. "You're a pilot?" he asked, smirking like it was a joke. People waiting in line began to turn, whispering, staring. Some laughed quietly, others pulled out their phones. "Yes. I'm scheduled to fly Flight 237 to New York this afternoon," Aaliyah answered calmly. But calm didn't save her. The guard leaned in. "Lady, I've been working security for 15 years. Don't play games. Whose uniform did you steal?" Heat rose in her chest. Her hands trembled, though she kept her voice steady. "Sir, this is my uniform. These are my credentials. I worked for this." Still, he dragged it on, calling over another officer, making her remove her shoes, empty her bag, while passengers kept watching. Every second burned like fire under her skin. She had dreamed of walking through airports as a captain. Instead, she was treated like a criminal. Her humiliation deepened when the second guard laughed. "A black woman flying a jet? Come on!" Tears fought their way to her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She stood tall. She knew who she was, no matter how they tried to strip it away. Just as they finally let her go, a loudspeaker blared through the terminal. A frantic voice. "Attention! We have an emergency. Flight 237 is declaring distress. The captain is incapacitated. Repeat, captain incapacitated." Passengers gasped. Some screamed. The very flight Aaliyah was meant to board was in trouble. Her chest tightened. Her humiliation was forgotten in an instant. Lives were now at stake. The guard looked at her, suddenly unsure. Aaliyah didn't wait for his permission. She picked up her bag, fire blazing in her eyes. She knew what she had to do. Would anyone believe she was the one who could save them? Long before the airport, before uniforms and licenses, Aaliyah Monroe was just a little girl with braids sitting on her father's shoulders near the Detroit airport fence. She was 9 years old, and planes roared above her like steel birds cutting the clouds. Each time one soared by, she squealed and clapped her tiny hands. Her father, Henry Monroe, worked in an auto factory. His hands were rough, his back tired, but his eyes lit up when he watched his daughter point at the sky. "Aim higher, baby girl," he'd whisper. "Don't let anyone tell you where you belong. The sky don't belong to nobody. Take it if you want it." She believed him. To little Aaliyah, flying wasn't impossible. It was destiny. But not everyone agreed. At school, she once drew a picture of herself in a pilot's hat for career day. A classmate laughed so hard he nearly fell off his chair. "Black girls don't fly planes. They serve drinks on them." His words stabbed deeper than he knew. Teachers didn't correct him. They just smiled awkwardly and moved on. Still, Aaliyah didn't give up. She read books on aviation, memorized plane models, practiced her math. She wanted to prove them wrong. She wanted to make her father proud. But life had a cruel way of striking at the heart. One winter night, she came home to find her father lying on the floor, clutching his chest. She screamed, dropped her school bag, and rushed to him. Her mother cried out for help, but by the time the ambulance came, it was too late. Henry Monroe was gone. 9 years old, and the one person who told her she could reach the sky had been ripped away. Her mother, Lorraine, broke apart with grief. Bills piled up. Food grew scarce. And with that pain came her mother's new refrain. Baby, the world's hard enough. Don't waste your life chasing a dream that don't belong to us. Your father's gone. Be safe. Be smart. Be realistic. But Aaliyah didn't let her father's words die. She whispered them every night before bed, aim higher, baby girl. Aim higher. Years later, when the acceptance letter she prayed for finally arrived, she would open it, and find not a dream, but rejection. Teenage years were a blur of part-time jobs and quiet determination. Aaliyah worked at diners, babysat neighborhood kids, stacked boxes at a warehouse just to help her mother keep the lights on. Every paycheck went to bills. But every spare minute went to studying aviation programs. She sent applications across the country. Her dream burned brighter with each envelope she mailed. Until the letters came back. One by one. Each stamped with the same cold word. Denied. Some said she lacked the math scores. Some claimed her extracurriculars weren't strong. Others didn't even bother explaining. She tried not to cry as she stuffed the rejection letters under her mattress. But each one cut like a blade. Her mother wasn't surprised. I told you, Aaliyah. The world don't hand us wings. Get a steady job. Something safe. But her father's voice echoed louder than doubt. She couldn't give up. Late one night, while sorting mail at the warehouse, she found herself staring at a plane flying overhead. She whispered into the dark, I'll get there. Somehow. The next week, she sent out 5 more applications. Then came a night she would never forget. A snowstorm covered Detroit. She sat at the kitchen table, staring at an unopened letter. Her hands shook as she tore it open. Rejection. Again. She screamed, slamming her fists on the table, tears flooding her face. She was ready to give up, for real this time. But then she remembered her father lying on that floor, his last words echoing, aim higher. She wiped her face, picked up another envelope, and whispered, If one door won't open, I'll kick down the next. Weeks later, an envelope arrived that didn't say, denied. It said, Welcome to Aviation Academy. The acceptance letter felt like a miracle. Aaliyah clutched it against her chest, running down the street in the snow, screaming with joy. For the first time in years, she felt unstoppable. A small aviation academy in Ohio had taken her in. It wasn't a big-name program, but it was a chance. And that was enough. The first day of class was a battlefield of stares. Most students were white men. A few glanced at her with open disgust, others with disbelief. The acceptance letter felt like a miracle. Aaliyah clutched it against her chest, running down the street in the snow, screaming with joy. For the first time in years, she felt unstoppable. A small aviation academy in Ohio had taken her in. It wasn't a big-name program, but it was a chance. And that was enough. The first day of class was a battlefield of stares. Most students were white men. A few glanced at her with open disgust, others with disbelief. She could almost hear their thoughts, she won't last the semester. But she had a secret weapon, Captain Reeves. He was an old, retired pilot with silver hair and a gravelly voice. From the first day, he noticed her focus. You remind me of myself, kid, he told her. Except you got twice the fire. Don't let them dim it. That fire carried her to her first solo flight. Sitting alone in the cockpit, her hands shook as the engine roared. But when the wheels lifted off the ground, The fear melted into pure freedom. For the first time since her father's death, she felt alive. She landed perfectly. Reeves hugged her like she was his own daughter. "That's it," he said. "That's the sky saying you belong here." But not everyone celebrated. One classmate in particular, Ryan, hated her guts. He smirked when she answered questions right. He rolled his eyes during her practice runs. And one evening, as she prepared for a test flight, Ryan's jealousy turned dangerous. Unseen, he loosened a bolt on her training plane's controls. Minutes into her solo flight, Aaliyah felt the stick jam. The plane refused to obey. The moment the controls locked, panic shot through Aaliyah's veins. The plane tilted, dropping fast. Her heart raced. She had seconds to act. She remembered Reeves's lessons: don't fight the plane. Feel it. Trust yourself. Her palms were slick with sweat, but she steadied her breathing. She tested the rudder, still worked. The throttle, responsive. The stick, jammed. She shifted her focus, pulling every ounce of training from memory. With one hand on the throttle and one on the rudder, she guided the plane into a shaky descent. The runway came into view. Alarm screamed. Her chest burned with fear, but she refused to quit. At the last second, she cut power, flared the nose, and skidded across the ground. The landing was rough, but it was safe. She stumbled out of the cockpit, legs trembling, gasping for air. Students gathered around, whispering. Ryan stood in the back, pale, realizing she had survived. Captain Reeves pushed through the crowd. "What happened?" "The controls, they were tampered with," she said, her voice shaking. The academy dismissed it as mechanical failure. No one wanted scandal. No one wanted to believe a student could sabotage another. But Reeves looked her dead in the eye. "Listen to me, Aaliyah. They will try harder to break you. They will not stop. You hear me? Not ever. But you," his voice cracked with emotion, "you were born to fly. Don't you ever let them win." Aaliyah nodded, her fears slowly hardening into resolve. She realized she wasn't just fighting for wings. She was fighting to prove she belonged in skies that others thought weren't hers to touch. What she didn't know was that someone else was about to enter her life, not with sabotage, but with love. A love that would later betray her deeper than any enemy. Here's the truth. Sometimes the people who smile the warmest are the ones who break you deepest. After months of training and fighting for her place, Aaliyah finally let her guard down. She met Marcus, a tall, confident law student with a smooth voice that could calm storms. He noticed her sitting alone at a coffee shop, books stacked high, uniform jacket draped across her chair. "Pilot?" he asked with a grin. "Yes," she said cautiously. "Well, then you must be the bravest woman in this whole city." It sounded sweet. And for a while, it felt real. Marcus became her comfort after long days of study. He held her hand through exhaustion, told her she was too good for the world, and promised he'd always support her dream. He talked about their future, house in the suburbs, kids who'd call her Captain Mom. Aaliyah let herself believe. But whispers of doubt slipped through the cracks. Marcus often joked, "Flying's cool, but don't forget, it's a man's job." He laughed after saying it, as if teasing, but the sting never faded. She tried to ignore it. Love makes excuses. Months later, one evening after class, Aaliyah returned to her apartment early. She opened the door and froze. Marcus's jacket was on the chair. His laugh echoed from the bedroom. And beside him, her own roommate. Her chest tightened, knees weak. Betrayal cut sharper than any rejection letter, sharper than any racist guard. Marcus jumped up, guilt written across his face. "It's not what it looks like," he stammered. But Aaliyah's silence spoke louder than screams. She grabbed her jacket, slammed the door, and walked away. That night, she sat alone, broken. But anger soon replaced the tears. If Marcus doubted her, if people mocked her, then she would rise even higher, not for them, but for herself. She thought heartbreak was her lowest moment. But her next humiliation came in uniform, when a customer at her night job mocked her dream in front of an entire restaurant. Sometimes pain sharpens you more than praise. After Marcus's betrayal, Aaliyah threw herself into training with the hunger no one could match. Her days started at dawn, running drills until sweat soaked her uniform. Her nights ended at a downtown diner, balancing trays of greasy plates just to cover tuition. Customers never guessed the waitress serving their burgers was studying to fly jets. One evening, after a 12-hour shift, a man in a business suit asked about her books stacked behind the counter. She answered honestly, "I'm studying to be a pilot." The man laughed loud enough for half the diner to hear. "A black girl flying planes? Honey, you better get real. Maybe you can pass peanuts on a flight, but you'll never fly one." The words stung. The other customers chuckled. Aaliyah forced a smile, placed his check on the table, and walked away. Inside, her heart burned. Later that night, in the quiet of her small apartment, she opened her books again. Each equation, each diagram of wings and engines, felt like fuel. She swore no insult, no betrayal, no rejection would stop her. By the time graduation came, Aaliyah wasn't just another student, she was top of her class. Captain Reeves shook her hand with pride. "You did it," he whispered. "But the real test starts now." She had her degree, but could she land a real airline job? The answer came with a letter offering her first position, as co-pilot on a commercial airline. The day she first stepped into a real commercial jet as co-pilot, Aaliyah felt her father's spirit walking beside her. The polished floors, the smell of jet fuel, the sound of passengers boarding, it was everything she dreamed of. Wearing her crisp new uniform, she greeted the captain. He glanced at her, raising an eyebrow. "You're the co-pilot?" His tone was sharp, like a question wrapped in doubt. But she answered confidently. "Yes, sir. Ready to serve." The first passengers boarded soon after. A little boy peeked into the cockpit and gasped, "Mom, the pilot's a girl!" His innocent excitement filled her with pride. But not everyone shared his wonder. Two older businessmen looked at her uniform and shook their heads. "I don't feel safe with this," one muttered. They demanded to speak to the flight attendants. Aaliyah overheard every word. Her stomach churned, but she stayed professional. The captain ignored them and pushed forward. Once airborne, clouds thickened. Suddenly, turbulence struck hard. The captain cursed under his breath, struggling with the controls. Aaliyah's instincts kicked in. Calm, steady, she took over, guiding the plane through the shaking sky, landing it safely 20 minutes later. When the wheels touched down, passengers erupted into applause. Some even cried. For the first time, she felt what it meant to be responsible for lives. But victory was short-lived. The next morning, HR summoned her. "Captain reports you overstepped your role," they said. "Taking over was against procedure." Aaliyah was stunned. She saved the plane, yet she was punished. Instead of recognition, she faced discipline. But worse, rumors spread among senior pilots that she didn't belong in the cockpit at all. Airline life wasn't glamorous. Behind the uniform came whispers, doubt, and invisible walls. Senior pilots referred to her as the quota hire. Some flight attendants secretly questioned if she had the skills to keep them safe. But passengers remembered her. Word spread about the young black woman who saved Flight 82. Online blogs praised her courage. She even received letters from children who now wanted to become pilots. It was bittersweet. She had strangers cheering for her while colleagues tore her down. Then came her second storm. Another flight, another rough sky. The captain froze under pressure. Aaliyah took over once again, steadying the aircraft. Passengers thanked her with tears in their eyes. But jealousy only grew sharper. That evening, she overheard two captains in the crew lounge. "She's showing us up. She's reckless. Someone needs to put her in her place." The words cut deep. She wanted to scream, but she bit her tongue. She'd faced worse. HR called her in again. Another warning. Another black mark on her record. She walked out shaking, wondering if she had a future left. Her phone buzzed. A message from Captain Reeves: "Don't you dare quit. Don't give them what they want. You were built for this." Her chest tightened. Tears rolled down her cheeks. She wasn't alone. But family wasn't so supportive. At home, her mother still told her to give it up. "Before the sky kills you." Family can wound deeper than strangers. One Sunday dinner, Aaliyah visited her mother, hoping for comfort. Instead, she got the same old refrain. "You need a safe job, Aaliyah. Teaching, nursing, anything but this flying mess. You'll kill yourself chasing white folks' dreams." The words pierced her. "Mom, this isn't their dream. It's mine. Daddy wanted this for me." But her mother shook her head. "If your father were alive, he'd want you safe." The argument ended with silence. Aaliyah drove back to her apartment, gripping the steering wheel, tears clouding her eyes. The loneliness felt unbearable. The next week at work, it only got worse. Older male captains ignored her, refusing to answer her questions. Her schedule was filled with short, exhausting flights designed to wear her down. She felt cornered at every turn. One night, alone in her hotel room after a flight, she stared at the ceiling and whispered, "Maybe they're right. Maybe I don't belong here." But her phone buzzed again. Captain Reeves had sent her a voice message. His gravelly voice said, "Listen to me, kid. They will push. They will laugh. They will tear at you until you break. But you can't break. Because you're the proof it can be done." She closed her eyes, letting his words sink in. The next morning, she woke with fire in her chest. She wasn't just flying for herself anymore. She was flying for every little girl who had ever been told, "You can't." News soon broke of a major promotion, a dream route opening up. But could she even get it when half the airline wanted her gone? Here's the hook: the people closest to you can hurt you deeper than strangers. By now, Aaliyah had saved flights, earned respect from strangers, and endured hate from colleagues. But home still wasn't safe. She returned one weekend to visit her mother. Lorraine Monroe sat at the kitchen table, bills scattered, old memories tucked in photo frames. The air was heavy. "Mom," Aaliyah began softly, "I might get promoted. A captain's route. It's my shot." Instead of joy, her mother's face hardened. "Captain? You'll be dead before 30. You think I want to bury my only child?" Aaliyah's voice cracked. "This is my dream, Mom. It's what Dad wanted too." "Your father's dead," her mother snapped. The room fell silent. "He wanted safety for you, not danger. Stop living in his ghost." The words stabbed her chest. Aaliyah pushed back tears. For years she had fought strangers, but hearing her own mother crush her dream felt unbearable. She stood, her chair scraping. "I won't stop, Mom. Not now. Not ever." She grabbed her jacket and walked out, slamming the door. Driving back, her heart pounded. She wondered if her mother would ever be proud, or if she was destined to chase approval she'd never get. Later that night, the news buzzed across her phone: dream route opening for promotion. Applications now live. She had the chance of a lifetime. But could she win when her enemies were waiting to pull her down? Opportunities come with battles. For Aaliyah, this promotion was her biggest test. She applied immediately, her hands trembling as she submitted the forms. Then came weeks of brutal evaluations, written exams, simulations, interviews. She studied through sleepless nights, fueled by determination and coffee. During one test, she executed a perfect emergency landing in a simulator, earning nods from junior staff. But the senior evaluators barely looked up. Their faces were stone. Her biggest challenge came in the form of sabotage. Ryan, the sane classmate from her academy days, was now working in the system. He still despised her. During one critical simulation, he slipped errors into her data, making her results appear weak. When the results came back, her scores looked inconsistent. Aaliyah was furious but powerless. She nearly broke down, but then Reeves called. "Let them cheat. Let them laugh. Your skill is too big for their games. Keep flying." She pushed harder. She studied longer. She perfected every maneuver until no one could deny her skill. At her final interview, she walked in with steady eyes and a calm voice. The panel tried to intimidate her, throwing trick questions. She answered every one with grace. She walked out knowing she gave everything. But just as she exhaled in relief, one evaluator whispered to another, "She'll never get my vote." Sometimes the sky feels within reach, only for someone to pull it away. When the promotion results came in, Aaliyah's heart pounded. She scanned the list. Her name missing. She felt the floor drop under her. She had worked harder than anyone, and yet here she was, shut out again. At home, she collapsed on her bed, sobbing into her pillow. For a moment, quitting felt like the only option. But then her phone rang. A group of younger pilots, many women, many minorities, had signed a petition. They demanded fairness. They spoke out, naming Aaliyah as the most qualified candidate. The airline scrambled. News spread online. Bloggers picked up the story. Black female pilot denied promotion despite top scores. Under pressure, the board reopened the selection. This time, they couldn't hide her skill. Aaliyah Monroe was officially named captain. The announcement brought tears to her eyes. She had finally done it. She wasn't just in the sky, she was leading it. She celebrated quietly, knowing battles were far from over. But for one night, she let herself breathe. That peace shattered days later at the airport, when a security officer accused her of stealing her own uniform. You'd think a captain's title would protect her. But prejudice doesn't care about titles. The day started like any other. Aaliyah walked through the airport in full uniform, proud and ready for her route. Passengers moved quickly around her. She held her license and ID in her bag, ready for inspection. Then a voice called, "Ma'am, step aside." Security again. Same suspicious tone. Same disbelief. The officer looked at her ID, then at her face, then at her uniform. "This doesn't add up. Whose jacket is that?" "I'm the captain," she replied firmly. He smirked. "Lady, you expect me to believe this? Come with me." He made her remove her shoes, empty her bag, even questioned her pilot license as if it were fake. People in line stared, some chuckled, some filmed on their phones. Humiliation burned her. She wanted to scream. But she kept calm, remembering Reeves's words. Finally, they let her go. She checked the clock, she was late. Her plane had already boarded. She grabbed her bag, ready to sprint. Then the loudspeaker echoed. "Attention, Flight 237, emergency declared. Both pilots incapacitated. Immediate assistance required." The blood drained from her face. It was her plane. Security looked at her in shock. The question was, would they let her save it? Picture this: hundreds of passengers boarding, crew scrambling, panic spreading, and the one person who could help being blocked by security. Aaliyah rushed toward the gate, her bag swinging, her heart pounding. "That's my flight," she said. "I'm the captain. They need me." The officer who had mocked her stepped in front. "Stay back. This isn't a game." A flight attendant ran up, eyes wide with terror. "The pilots are down. We need help. Please." The guard shook his head. "She's not qualified." Aaliyah's chest flamed with rage. She pulled out her license, shoved it in his face. This is my qualification. You waste another second, and 317 lives will be on your hands. Passengers nearby gasped. Phones filmed. The pressure mounted. Finally, the flight attendant screamed, "Get out of the way!" and pulled Aaliyah through the gate. Her legs shook as she sprinted down the jet bridge. Inside the plane, chaos exploded. Passengers cried, children screamed, oxygen masks dangled. The co-pilot slumped unconscious. The captain motionless. The cockpit was silent but for alarms blaring. Aaliyah's hands tightened around the doorframe. The moment she dreamed of, the moment she feared, was here. She slid into the captain's seat, alarms flashing red. The plane was already dropping. Could she save them in time? Here's the hook. Imagine being strapped into a seat, hearing children scream, the ground rushing closer, and realizing the only person flying your plane is the one security just tried to stop. That was the reality now. Aaliyah gripped the controls, alarms screaming in her ears. The plane dipped hard, passengers thrown against seatbelts. Every instinct told her she had seconds. She leveled her voice over the intercom. "This is Captain Monroe. Stay calm. I've got you." Her words steadied the chaos. A mother clutched her baby tighter. A man lowered his hands from panicked prayer. People listened. But inside, Aaliyah battled fear. Her training told her what to do: stabilize altitude, silence alarms, check systems. But her heart reminded her that one mistake meant headlines. Her face splashed across news as "Black pilot fails." The engines coughed. The sky tilted. Sweat dripped into her eyes. Suddenly a voice, Reeves, echoed in her mind. "Trust your training. Trust yourself." Her hands steadied. She adjusted throttle, lifted the nose, countered the drop. Slowly, the dive eased. The screams quieted into gasps. For a moment, hope returned. Just as the plane steadied, a new light flashed: engine failure on the right side. When things go wrong, they don't always come one at a time. The right engine sputtered, then burst into flame. Gasps rippled through the cabin. From her seat, Aaliyah saw orange licking the wing. The control tower buzzed in her ear. "Flight 237, report status." She clenched her jaw. "Right engine fire. Attempting emergency procedures." But the fire spread faster than expected. Flight attendants rushed to keep passengers calm, though panic spread like wildfire. In that moment, memories rushed back, every insult, every time she was told she didn't belong. Now hundreds of lives depended on her belonging. She cut fuel to the engine, pulled emergency systems, released extinguishers. For a second, nothing. Then, blessedly, the flames died down. The wings smoked but held steady. Passengers cheered. Strangers clapped. Hope flickered. But the relief didn't last long. They were still too heavy, too low, and losing altitude fast. She needed to make a choice: turn back or risk landing on water. Her heart raced. Her decision would mean life or death. Just as she prepared to turn, the radio crackled with a chilling warning. "Runway blocked. You can't land here." Picture this: a plane losing altitude, one engine gone, fuel dropping, and now, the only runway within reach blocked by another aircraft. Aaliyah's breath hitched. Options vanished. Control tower spoke fast. "Divert to Madison Field, 30 miles east." 30 miles? In a crippled plane. With 317 souls aboard. She tightened her grip. "Copy that." Inside the cabin, people whispered prayers, some cried openly. A child shouted, "Are we gonna die?" His mother hushed him, eyes red. Aaliyah pressed the intercom. "Stay with me. We're going to make it." Every second mattered. She trimmed the controls, cut unnecessary power, angled the nose for efficiency. The plane crawled toward Madison Field, but altitude dropped dangerously. Below, the ground looked closer than it should. The tower radioed again. Field cleared. Runway ready. Relief surged, but it wasn't enough. She knew they might not reach it. Her training said procedure. Her heart said push. She leaned forward, whispering, "Come on, baby, just a little more." The plane groaned. The crowd inside fell silent. The field came into view, then alarms screamed again, hydraulic system failing. She might not control the landing gear. Here's the hook: what if the only thing standing between life and death is a landing gear that may not open? That was Aaliyah's nightmare now. Hydraulic failure meant wheels might not drop. Landing a jet on bare metal at full weight could mean fire, explosion, death. She radioed in. "Possible gear malfunction. Prepare emergency crews." Inside, panic rose again. Flight attendants braced passengers. Seat belts clicked. Hands clenched armrests. Aaliyah breathed deep, her father's voice in her memory. "A pilot is calm in the storm." She tried the gear. One light flashed green. Two stayed red. Fault confirmed. Her mind raced. She had practiced belly landings in simulators, never in life. She spoke into the intercom. "This will be rough. Stay strong." The field drew closer. Sirens wailed on the ground, trucks waiting, crews ready. She brought the nose down, flaps adjusted, airspeed managed. The runway loomed larger. The first wheel touched, screech. Sparks flew. The plane tilted, skidding sideways. People screamed. Fire licked from below. Aaliyah pulled every ounce of strength into the controls, fighting the slide. For a heart-stopping moment, the jet teetered on collapse, then steadied. It slowed. Sparks died. The plane screeched to a halt. Silence. Then thunderous applause, sobs, cheers. Aaliyah collapsed against the seat, tears streaming. She had done it. She had saved them. As rescue crews rushed in, cameras swarmed too. The question was, would the world finally see her as a hero, or would prejudice twist the story again? Sometimes redemption comes not from applause but from the truth that can't be denied. News of the landing spread like wildfire. Videos from passengers went viral within hours. Black woman saves 317 lives. Headlines splashed across every outlet. For the first time, the world saw Aaliyah Monroe not as a question mark, not as an imposter, but as a captain, steady, brave, unshakable. At the press conference, she stood in her smoky uniform, eyes swollen from tears. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted. One asked, "Did security almost stop you from saving this plane?" She paused. The silence in the room was heavy. Then she said, "Yes. But I don't stand here to shame them. I stand here because despite everything, I still chose to fly. And I always will." Her words struck deep. Even her mother, watching from home, wept. That night, Lorraine called, whispering, "Your father would be proud." The airline offered her the highest honor. But more importantly, strangers across the nation sent letters saying, "You gave my daughter hope, you showed my son courage, you made us believe." Her story wasn't just about a landing. It was about rising when the world tried to bury her. And as she walked back into the cockpit days later, greeted by applause from her crew, she whispered to herself, "This is only the beginning." If this story moved you, don't just scroll away. Share it, comment your thoughts, and let the world know that courage, kindness, and faith can overcome hate. Subscribe for more stories that remind us of who we can be when life tests us.